Yo, what is up? Today I have a review of probably my longest carried knife so far. This is the knife that actually kind of got me into, or I would say maybe back into, everyday carry. I had a few years ago started carrying just like a cheap Cabela's like 30-buck knife. That was my first ever bearing knife, and I loved that thing. Ended up losing it, and this is what I got to replace it. And this guy I carried for probably a year, almost a year and a half straight, before I ended up swapping that out for some of the other knives that I have and started getting a little bit more into just the EDC in general. But this is the O knife Drever. I've been a big fan of O lights for a few years. I had the original Warrior Mini, absolutely loved that thing. Ended up losing that at the same time as that Cabela's knife, and got Warrior Mini 2. And right around the time I was ordering that Warrior Mini 2 is when they came out with these guys. I've got that in the black and blue, and I was like, ooh, perfect. A nice little matching set. But this is a pretty solid knife. It's made by Kaiser. I believe all of the O knife offerings are OEM'd by Kaiser. So the action on it is fantastic, both for the flipper and for the thumb studs. Easy reverse flick on the thumb studs, perfect thumb action on them, and the flipper is great for push button or for a more light switch. You can get that flipper to fail, but you really have to try to do it. But in terms of an EDC knife, this thing is fantastic. The clip has bent out just enough to make a little kind of rattling sound, but yeah, I mean, that's somewhat to be expected after a couple, or over a year of carry in and out of the pocket. One issue that some people have with this is the pocket clip is not reversible, but I'm a right-handed person, so that really doesn't matter too much to me. What really drew me to this knife initially was how slim it looks while it's open. Something about that with this modified sheep's foot blade I really liked, and this has been a great EDC knife, with one exception I would say, and that is the length of the blade. This is a blade length that I definitely like. If we compare that up to the Spyderco PM2 here, it is, a similar blade length. You have about the same amount of cutting edge, and overall it's about the same length of knife. This is a very good, for me, EDC size. I like that slightly larger size for kind of a do-all knife. But the one issue that I have with the length of the blade is this design. It does make it so you have to kind of cant your wrist up a little bit to get that tip in for more utility type cuts. If you're not really canting that wrist, you're more slice cutting than tip cutting. But other than that, I've found that this knife is absolutely, a workhorse of a knife. It's an N690 steel. Not too bad of a steel. I've sharpened this thing a number of times. It takes a real nice edge, but it doesn't hold that edge super long, especially once you start experiencing 20 CV or LMAX here on the ANV A100. Those steels are definitely going to last with, at least a working cutting edge, like not necessarily a shave sharp edge, but that nice working edge. Those are going to hold that a lot longer than the N690. That being said, N690 strops up super fast. I really can't complain about that at all, as more of a budget steel for EDC. So, decent knife that I really put in a ton of use, and it's still going solid. The detent is on the stronger side, but this is definitely a knife that's not going to be just opening in your pocket at all. This is, it's it's fantastic. I love this knife. It's definitely not my favorite anymore by any means, but it's definitely going to have a place in my heart because, like I said, this is the knife that kind of really got me into EDC. But comfortable handle. I don't have super big hands. My hands are, I would say, more of them on the medium side, or medium large size. They're not real big, but you can get a full 4-finger grip on there, and they've got a nice generous finger choil up here for doing more detail oriented work, or if you just need a little extra leverage or choking up. I do like this kind of reverse thumb ramp here for doing those tasks. It just kind of fits perfectly right there with your thumb and gives you just a little bit more leverage for kind of sucking in and keeping that tight. The jimping on the back here, not my favorite. It's there, but it's relatively smooth. You can get a bit of a grip to it, but you kind of have to push hard and down into it rather than just up. I do like the jimping on the PM2 a lot better. It's a lot more aggressive. It kind of just grabs your fingers, so there's a little bit less of a chance of slip in there. But that being said, I've never had an issue with this thing slipping out of my hands by any means. It's just that, yeah, I prefer that jimping to be a little bit more aggressive personally. The texturing on the G10 is fairly run-of-the-mill. I mean, it's there. It's not specifically textured in any way. The G10 does look pretty nice. It's got sort of a micarta-y look to it. I do like that. I don't know if they did change the colors in their layers or anything like that, but it's a pretty solid G10. Can't really complain there. Centering on this knife has always been absolutely perfect. Never had an issue with that from the beginning. The pocket clip, I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. I do feel like it's a little bulky, but it is inset mostly into the scale, and it really has never caused me any issues with putting it in my pocket or taking it out. I do like the Kaiser clips overall. They're fairly decent. We've got mini beg lighter 2 here, basically the same exact clip. And yeah, they feel a little bulky or like tall, I would say. I mean, most people's pockets aren't, what is that, like a 1/4 of an inch thick? So I don't think it's necessary to have it quite so protruding, but it doesn't really get in the way too much, and it doesn't create much in the way of hot spots in your hand while you're holding it, especially if you're choked up into that finger choil there. I will say that how low this is in the front does kind of make it so that it catches on my pocket sometimes. While a lot of people don't really like or have issues with the Civivi clips, I find that this guy slides in and out of the pocket a little bit better. And I don't know if it's just because of that goose bill, which is the reason that a lot of people aren't a big fan, that can really kind of dig into your hand a little bit there. But yeah, for whatever the reason is, I do find that those Civivi clips slide in and out of my pockets a bit better than the Kaiser clips, or even honestly the Spyderco clip on this PM2. Decent clip, but you know, I am going to be replacing that with a deep carry one at some point. So, I mean, there's not much more to say about the Drever, I don't think. Lockup is in a pretty perfect position, in my opinion. It might be a little kind of difficult to tell there, but the lockup is, I would say, about 1/3. It's fully onto the tang, but it's not so far that at any point I feel like it's going to, over lock or anything like that. The lock bar access is fantastic on this knife. There's a big cutout there in the scale, and that makes easy access to that lock bar. And then yeah, the action definitely drops up. And overall, I think Kaiser knocked it out of the park. This is Olight's first knife. I haven't tried out any of their other ones, just because I've been, not impressed by the aesthetics of some of their newer knives. They look cool, but nothing's really. I mean, I don't need another thumb stud or flipper tab liner lock. I got plenty of those already. So yeah, thanks for tuning in to this little overview of the Drever. I do think this is a fantastic EDC knife. I've put a lot of time behind this blade, and I would say if it's something that appeals to you aesthetically, go ahead and get it. N690 is definitely a decent steal. Maybe not for I think they're still looking for $70 for this, so, if you're a stickler for blade steel, you can find some better ones for around that same price. But if this is a knife that kind of speaks to you in terms of aesthetic design, I would say get it. It has served me very well, and I think it'll serve you well too. Minimal hardware, one screw and the pivot. And yeah, these are T6, so do be careful when you're taking this guy apart. I've already stripped one of my pocket clip screws, so this guy's not going to be probably coming apart too much anyway. There is a little bit of milling on the inside. Keep it lightweight. It's not exceptionally lightweight, but it's nice and slim, and it does disappear in the pocket. So check it out. Thanks for tuning in.